We are an electric powerboat racing series with 9 teams owned by LeBron James, Will Smith, Tom Brady.
Consumers have so much choice these days in content. There's like an ocean of content out there. It must be super ambitious to launch a brand new league from scratch.
What we're interested in is what stories are we trying to tell? And then we can start to build up a technology stack which allows us to tell those stories. Nearly all of our storytelling has to be transmitted from the water back to the land. Each boat delivers back enormous amounts of real-time data. The tilt of the motor, acceleration, it's position accurate to about an inch. Well, we've given them the ability to have an AR lens application which allows them to overlay all the data on a little tabletop in front of them. If you're not using AI, you're wasting time.
If there was ever an idea to evolve your sport to pilotless boats where it was just autonomous AI pilots racing the boats, I don't think anyone would really care or watch.
We use this 50-meter high camera. That camera had to be on the top of a crane on a barge on the sea. Rafa Nadal and Will Smith were on site. We had them race against one another, having had no experience driving the boats before. And this happened just before their teams were about to drive those same boats in a race together.
Welcome back to Playback Pioneers, the podcast where we pass the mic to the people shaping the future of content and playback technology. I'm Laurence Hodgson from 5E Video, and I'm your facilitator for this handoff moment as we kick off another episode in our relay style series. So if you've been following our journey so far, you'll know this podcast isn't just about polished pitches or surface level insights. It's about real conversations with the folks pushing boundaries. So technologists, creatives, and decision makers who are rethinking how media is created, distributed, and experienced. So in the last episode, we saw Bluen Le Goffik from Acedo step into the host chair and lead a powerful discussion with Patrick Costello of Qualcomm. So together they unpacked the evolution of immersive media, digging into XR, AI, and the complex business models behind it all. So they explored Qualcomm's long-term investment in XR, how empathy drives collaboration in global tech, and the rising need to redefine vendor-customer dynamics. So the conversation also challenged us to think differently about how data, storytelling, and human connection intersect in immersive content experiences, especially in spaces like sport and video production, where transformation is happening fast. It was bold, it was thoughtful, and it definitely raised the bar. But now the baton passes again. And Patrick, welcome back. Great to have you with us again, this time on the other side of the table. And I promise I won't be too grueling with my questions a bit later on. I do sincerely mean that. But how are you feeling about being in the host seat today?
I love it. Happy to be back. And it feels a little bit more relaxed being on this side of the table. So I'm sure Laurence is a pro, but I definitely am happy to be the one asking the questions this time.
Good answer. Great stuff. And look, Laurence Boyd, it's great to have you here. And yes, let's get out of the way. We're both called Laurence, spelled with a U. An industry and playback pioneers first for two Laurences, I think, to be in the same room. However, this Laurence is the Chief Content and Product Officer at E1 Series. So really excited to dig into the world of E1 and the types of things you're pioneering over there. So how are you feeling in the guest seat?
Good, thanks. As a producer, I'm much happier being on the other side, but lovely to be here, and thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, like I said to Patrick, I won't be too hard on you, so you'll be right at home. Well, look, without further ado, I'll leave you to it, and I'll jump back in at the end with some quick fire questions to round things off. Have fun.
All right, Laurence. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know you're in the middle of the season, so I'm sure you're busy. So really appreciate you taking the time to join the podcast. It's the last time I did it. I really had a good time. It was very casual and fun, nothing too scripted. So I think let's have a good time with it. And I think maybe for those listening and watching, it might be good, since E1 is a new league, maybe you just tee up kind of your role and what E1 series is all about as a start, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thanks. And thanks for having me again, Patrick. So I am Chief Content and Product Officer at E1 Series. E1 Series is a very new league. We have had just 7 events launching in January 2024. We are an electric powerboat racing series with 9 teams owned by some of the biggest stars in sport and entertainment, from LeBron James to Will Smith to Tom Brady to Virat Kohli. And we race our electric foiling race boats around the world in some beautiful locations, including Monaco and Miami and Venice and Lake Como.
You picked all the best spots, so gonna probably not too hard to draw a crowd for those venues, I would guess. But the one thing that popped to mind when I first learned about E1, I was like, wow, consumers have so much choice these days in content. There's like an ocean of content out there. It must be super ambitious to launch a brand new league from scratch. But also, as a technologist, and I'm sure you feel the same way, like having a kind of a clean slate to build something up from the ground up and decide what your platforms are with a blank sheet of paper must be really interesting and probably comes with some pros and cons. I'm just wondering, like, how you thought through those trade-offs and how what decisions you made early on to make sure you were set up for success from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, it is definitely great coming with a blank slate. And the way that I approach it really is from a storytelling perspective. So what we're interested in first and foremost is what stories are we trying to tell? And then we can start to build up a technology stack which allows us to tell those stories. So we knew that having boats on big plains of water was going to create some challenges and some opportunities. First of all, where do you put branding? If you're racing on a 2.5 kilometer square block of water in the sea or a lake or a river, so it became clear that we needed some tech to help us do that, and that's where we started to look at things like mixed reality, augmented reality, particularly for the branding, and also virtual reality. So some things come out of challenges, and then they create other opportunities. So once you're in a world where you have the capability to use mixed reality, you can start to layer on all sorts of other things to help with the storytelling as well.
Yeah, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you are, in fact, using those technologies. But just thinking about some of the challenges you talked about, like, I am assuming, I've never been to one yet. I hope to get one soon, but that your spectator, the folks actually at the race can only get so close to the action, right? Obviously, for obvious reasons. The challenges of having, fast moving vehicles recording both on boat and off boat. What are some of the biggest things that you guys had to innovate around? And maybe, if you want to weave in the AR, VR, XR, piece into actually how you implement it, that would be awesome.
Sure. So, fundamentally, nearly all of our storytelling has to be transmitted from the water back to the land. So the first challenge is, how do you do that? So we created a big mesh network across the water, which allows us to transport the signals back to land. And those signals are a mixture of data. So we work with a business called Alchemel Systems, who are an established timing and graphics partner in motorsport world. And they built us a huge mesh network. And each boat delivers back enormous amounts of real-time data, including its position accurate to about an inch, but also all sorts of other data. So like the tilt of the motor, are they on their foils? What's the acceleration? So loads of data points coming on that network, as well as lots of camera signals. So each boat has at least 4 onboard camera positions, including one panning, tilting, zooming camera on the top, which produces incredible images. A partner called Crosshore, who come out of the sailing world, helped us with that. But then also 3 or 4 more fixed positions on the boat facing in different directions. Then we have the challenge of how do we deal with the fact that we're in these locations where often there's quite a lot of wind, and we're also trying to be sustainable. So we want to tell the story of this racing across quite a big area. We don't want to be using helicopters, and we can't always rely on drones. So we need to have a big crane with a camera on it to give us the wide shot, in traditional broadcast situation, the camera one, to get us the positions of all the boats. We're sending back the camera signals, we're sending back the data, and we get all those signals back to the remote production end. So it's a remote production. Again, we're thinking about sustainability when we were planning this production. So rather than sending everybody who's involved in making the production to wherever we're racing, we send the signals back home and we mix them and add all of the different layers that make up the production in London. And those layers include, as we touched on earlier, virtual reality and augmented reality. Virtual reality is kind of a get out of jail free card for the director, because he's got everything that he needs in one shot. But it also allows us to do all sorts of great data overlays and also add branding, add our sponsors and partners and to the show. So that's the virtual element, and then the augmented reality element allows us to really make clear what the playing field of this racetrack is, where the edges are, where the marks are, where the start line is, the finish line, and then we can add on the real-time data that we're getting back from the boats. So the speed of the boats, we can add the distance of the boats from one another. And once you're in this world where you have the virtual environment created in Unreal Engine, and you can layer that onto the video with calibrated cameras, you can also then take those data points and that virtual world and create gaming experiences. So we have the simulator experience for people on site currently, although it's starting to develop into a game that people can play at home with real-time data as well. And that is all born out of the requirement to have this augmented reality to help add sponsor partners at the beginning. It opens up this enormous world of opportunity for us.
Yeah. And it all starts with all that data, that massive amount of data you're collecting on the front end, obviously. I'm just curious, are you splitting that data out between, like, are the race teams using any of that as well for race management, or is that all going over to broadcast and production pipeline?
So, no, good question. So they do, the race teams get a limited amount of that data, of their own data. So we want to make it easy for them to measure their own performance and improve their strategy. But they only get their own data, and we don't give them every single data point.
Got it. And then on the AR VR piece, it sounds like you're starting to not only obviously integrate into the actual broadcast for the broadcast feed, but that also there's some, end user client or, end device benefit are you distributed out like on the Quest platform, or how are consumers able to experience your content in AR and VR today at home?
So at home, not yet.
Okay.
We're beginning the journey of that. So at events, there are simulators where they can take part in either real time against the boats that are taking part in the race on the water, or they can use recorded data or just race against themselves. But there's also another application, which is a sort of AR lens application, which is used by spectators in hospitality. So earlier you touched on the fact that there's a challenge of how close spectators are to the action. Well, we've given them the ability to have an AR lens application, which allows them to overlay all the data on a little tabletop in front of them, which shows them the real-time positions of the boats, and they have all sorts of other data points they can look at while they're watching the racing with this AR lens application. But in the fullness of time, the plan is that while people of my Gen X generation might be leaning back and watching the broadcast on CBS or ITV in the UK, my son can be taking part in the race virtually wearing a headset with the real-time data coming through to his through Steam or some other game application, or maybe even Roblox, but he can be taking part in the same race that I'm watching on my TV.
Yeah, it sounds like, you're integrating all the core technologies now, whether they're actually being used in that way or not, but in the future, you're setting yourself up for success. And any evolution that, this is kind of what Qualcomm focuses on, any evolution for that next transition for how humans are going to consume content going forward. Can't have any podcast without talking about the obvious two-letter word AI. Obviously, your fully integrated immersive technologies into your pipeline. How are you guys thinking about AI? Are you using AI at all today in either the production side or the distribution side or the consumer facing side? And if so, how, and maybe a little glimpse into the benefit you think it drives to your business?
So we are using some AI, and I'm going to go back in time a bit to tell you about what a difference it's made. So in E1 is my second electric sport. I started in Formula E in about 2015, 2016. And a couple of years in, we introduced AR into our broadcast product. It was actually inspired by a digital video that was created, which was like a Mario Kart video where we put some sort of 8-bit graphics or into a video of the cars racing. So, there was a little crash and sparks came off, and then they were taking things out on the track. And the FIA said to us that we want to introduce this new thing into the racing, which is two speeds. So that basically the drivers can get a power up. So as a creative team, we thought, well, look, if we're going to do power ups, it's kind of Mario Kart, right? Why can't we have the cars go slightly off the racing line and pick up a power up, and then join the race with more speed for a certain amount of time? A bit like if you picked up the mushroom in Mario Kart. So we were just at the point where the tech was available for us to overlay some really cool graphics on the track to demonstrate to the viewers at home what could be done, and the power up that was happening in the racing. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, and we started to plan for E1, and we knew that this AR tech was going to help us to tell the story in a different way by putting on the boundaries of the racetrack and showing the distances between the boats and so on. But when it came to gaming 6 years ago, building the environments for
I have
the
to
cars.
ask, did you even think about licensing the mushroom design from Mario for that augmentation?
I think Nintendo's price would have been a bit steep for us at that point.
That would have been hilarious.
It would have been amazing. But yeah, so when we tried to put together gaming products with the same level of data back into 2018, building those environments was incredibly time consuming and expensive. So we worked with a Spanish company, and there were 25 developers working for a month to build the environments that we needed. Fast forward to 2024, 2025, and we were looking at the same thing with the boats, and we can now use generative AI and build those environments with fewer than a third of the number of people in less than half the amount of time. So it is dramatically increased the capability of organizations like us that don't have huge budgets to do really interesting things that are quite close to the cutting edge of what's possible.
Yeah, amazing. So one of the things we're really focused on now, and we're seeing a huge trend, is, of course, we have fully augmented reality glasses. We have, full immersive VR and MR devices, but we're now seeing a pretty sharp spike and increase in smart glass technology, right? So we have glasses that are sort of approaching the weight and form factor and look of the glasses kind of we're wearing today, a little bit slightly bigger. They may or may not have displays, but these are going to be glasses that are essentially, aided by AI, LLMs in the cloud, or maybe even smaller language models on device, running on device. Do you guys think that far ahead as far as when trends like this start to emerge? Are you looking at, okay, how can, as a sport, we start to think about if consumers are going to be wearing these types of devices by a certain point, how do we adjust, how do we start to plan now for that eventuality 2 or 3 or 4 years from now? Or is that just, for where you guys are as a sport, is that just too far down the road for you guys to think about at this point?
I think to be honest, we're not thinking so far ahead. I mean, the challenges of a brand new startup sport are so many that thinking so far ahead with the capability of emerging tech, it is difficult to manage with a small team and tight budgets. But I think the key thing really is that we're building out a tech stack which will allow us to do interesting things when those technologies become available to consumers. And I've got no doubt that the fact that, we're using these AR lens tabletop data overlays for our guests in hospitality, they would transfer immediately into with very little development into a lens product. So I think the critical thing when you're planning your tech stack is that it's scalable for future devices, future applications,
Right.
and that we sort of rely on our partners, particularly in the case of AR and VR. We work with a brilliant business called Badass Studios, who are incredibly innovative and forward thinking, and I'm sure that they have been thinking about what can be done beyond the applications that we're already developing now.
That's great. Well, I think Georgia mentioned earlier that there's one question that I sort of am handed from the previous host. So I'm going to ask you this question, and I was trying to think about how I would answer it, and it's maybe not as easy as it sounds, because it is a very simple question, but I'm just going to throw it out there. And since we were on the AI topic, why would you not invest in AI?
Why would you not invest in AI? This is sort of like a secondary school debate, isn't it? And I feel like I'm going to have to take a position that I don't really agree with. I fundamentally, I think you if you're not investing in AI and you're not using AI, you're to be blunt, wasting time at this point, and therefore money. But I think there are lots of reasons why you have to be careful about investing in AI and how you use AI. I mean, as I touched on before, my training is to be a producer, and fact checking and checking your sources is a fundamental part of your early days in the business. And I think there is a danger with AI that you can just produce scripts, for example, very, very quickly that maybe don't have the same rigorous fact checking that would have gone into a journalist going to 3 different sources and making sure that their facts were correct. So, but that isn't an argument not to use AI. That's an argument to check the script that AI produces better, right? There are definitely cases where the introduction of tech, which removes people from workflows, can reduce quality of output. But I tend to think that there are ways of overcoming the challenges that those new techs present that are probably less problematic than the problems that were being solved beforehand. So I'm not really answering the question. I'm disagreeing with it.
It was a tough one. I think about it in terms of maybe, like, I guess in any, like whenever there's a race like this to just, move to one thing so fast, when there's so much competition and choice available and the market's moving so fast, I guess there's probably a risk for you to put yourself on an island if you select, potentially partners or vendors that you might be here today but not here tomorrow. I would assume there's some risk of that. I also think it, mentioned the word storytelling, which I fully agree that a huge part of sports is just telling the story for the fan. And I kind of equate it. I was thinking about this the other day about films, because some of the AI, generated, short films now are quite amazing from a technology standpoint and just a visual quality standpoint. But I'm going, there's something that isn't really resonating with me when I watch these things, because part of enjoying a film or a movie is like when you're really touched by something or something really strikes a chord with you, part of that calculus, I think, in your brain is you sort of are, dumbfounded that a fellow human being can produce something like this, right? So yeah, AI is there as a tool, but if you completely take the human element out of it, I think you lose something, no matter how beautiful it looks or no matter how cinematic it looks, no matter how well the story is told. I think we know subconsciously that if the human wasn't involved in creating that, it means a little bit less to us, is kind of how I feel about it. But
I totally agree with you. I think that in the same way as a movie is trying to create these transcendental moments where you feel something, where you're touched, I think the joy of sport is that you have those moments. And even in an emerging sport like E1, seeing the joy on the faces of a young pilot who's just won a race for the first time, those are special moments. And I think if we were in a world where the cameras were being cut by a computer, without the human interface, you might miss a stunning moment that an AI image detection piece of software couldn't detect, couldn't see. And I think it's absolutely true that AI is capable of doing a lot of things to a very good level. I think what we're aiming for when we're producing high quality content is to produce something to an excellent level all the time. And that's where all the layers that are built into productions, from the way they've been designed for decades, there's so many sort of fail safes in there, so many editorial checks, so many people working really hard to do the very best job they can, whether it be a camera operator knowing where a sports star is going to walk after they've achieved something and panning the camera in the right direction, or a director having the intelligence to pick up that camera in that moment, even though it might not be the most obvious shot. Those are things that you might lose if you are in a fully automated world where the decision is being made by a human but by a computer.
Yeah, 100% agree. And maybe taking it to the extreme, like, for the same reason, if there was ever an idea to evolve your sport to pilotless boats, where it was just autonomous AI pilots racing the boats, I don't think anyone would really care or watch, right? Because you take the human element out of it, and I think it just means less. So
I totally agree. I had the interesting experience of watching something called Robo Race, which happened when I was working on Formula E. So they raced on the same tracks as the Formula E cars, and they drove often nearly as quickly. And the first experience of seeing the race is extraordinary, particularly when you get the shots inside the cockpits of the cars, because steering wheel's moving, the pedals are moving, and the wheels are turning, but there's nobody in there. And so the first lap or two is really interesting. But once you've seen that the problem was solved, that they've worked out how to do it, really there wasn't much left.
Right.
I think what makes sport incredible is humans, and seeing them overcome adversity, seeing them do extraordinary things and surprising even themselves. So yeah, if you take away humans from sport, then it becomes something entirely different.
Yeah. So I think that, to put a bow on that I think AI is a tool to enhance what we do and tell the story better is a positive, but probably that, there's a line there somewhere where once you cross that threshold or cross that boundary, you start to take away from the experience and not add to it. So I guess finding that line is the tricky part.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think at the moment it's incredibly useful for saving time and money. I'm not even this week actually. I've seen the advanced capability of AI to produce now incredible movie pictures with audio. That was this week. I saw that for the first time, and I heard an incredible podcast that was generated by putting a book into an AI engine. 10 seconds later, a podcast discussion came out about that book. Extraordinary things, but the pictures lacked something, and the podcast was without the level of human emotion and interaction that you would get if somebody who got themselves to the position where they were hosting a podcast.
Right.
Current situation included. It didn't have the level of human emotion, interaction, and intelligence that you would expect.
I'm sure if Laurence is listening in his headphones, he's happy to hear that he won't be replaced by AI anytime soon. All right, Laurence, you have I think a couple weeks until your next big race in Dubrovnik, right? What sort of keeps you up at night from a technology preparedness and readiness, maybe the week leading up to the big event, and what are the big things that you really have to account for prior to the boats starting going around the track?
Well, when you are working in a new sport like E1, particularly a sport that tours around the world and hits different cities, then every new event in a new city brings a whole set of new challenges. And often you don't know what the biggest of those challenges is going to be until very close to the on-air date or on-air time. So one of our first few races in 2024, we were based on an island in just off the city of Venice in Italy. And literally everything that we needed for the production had to be floated across the sea onto this island on barges. And we use this 50-meter high camera to show the story of the racing. That camera had to be on the top of a crane on a barge on the sea. So some of the things that we have to do to make our racing happen in E1 are quite extraordinary, and often problems that I don't think have been solved before. So literally every event comes with new challenges. So Dubrovnik is an interesting case in point. So Dubrovnik as a city was designed to keep people out. It's a walled city. It's a medieval walled city. And it was literally developed to keep people out. So when you're trying to bring in a crane to put a camera on top of, or say 9 boats, it's impossible. So in Dubrovnik, we're having to drive those boats 10 kilometers around the coast to get to the racetrack. We're going to have to probably float a crane on a big barge to get it to the position it needs to be in. Unique challenges to each city we're in. What keeps me up? Look, the truth is, we have a brilliant team of people that really know their jobs. We lean on the experience that they have to plan properly, to do great recce's and understand what the challenges are going to be. But despite that, something will go wrong. I know something will go wrong, and what we then rely on is the experience of the people that are working on it to help fix those problems in the moment.
Wouldn't be much fun if nothing went wrong, right? You had to have something, little things.
I wouldn't mind a race where nothing went wrong, but yeah, it does keep you on your toes, and I think it's where you earn your money really as a producer. It's solving those problems in the moment.
I seem to recall an early promo video, maybe when you announced the league, that I saw where it showed the boats like operating in almost like it was like Antarctica, or like where there were icebergs floating around and things like. So I think the point was, I'm wondering if they're going to challenge you from a production standpoint and you put one of those races on the calendar, and and you're going to have to get your foul weather gear purchased for your production.
Yeah, up for the challenge, Patrick. Up for the challenge, and I think somewhere it would look. We've been looking at some incredible places to race the boats. One of the great things about E1 as a spectacle is that it really showcases the place that you're in. So we've designed the production to make sure that if you're going to be in Dubrovnik or Monaco or Lake Como, that the place that you're in is really showcased in the TV production. So I could think it would be totally magnificent to be racing around icebergs, or even somewhere incredibly hot. Which would give us a whole new set of challenges. I mean, the boats obviously are electric, so they have batteries. So we all know what happens to our phone batteries when they get a bit cold, or our car batteries if we drive electric cars. So I'm sure that at some point there will be an opportunity to do something like race around an iceberg. And I know that will come with an all new set of challenges to overcome.
That's fun. Well, hey, Laurence, I really enjoyed the chat. I mean, if there's anything else you want to talk about or touch on, given your busy schedule and the race coming up, from a technology standpoint or an E1 series standpoint, anything you want to cover that we haven't really talked about?
Well, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on people who are using extended reality in interesting ways in sports and sports broadcasting particularly.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area where, Qualcomm particularly is focused on, and certainly we appreciate E1's partnership in our XR Sports Alliance. So we know that sports is always, whenever we sort of survey the market about what consumers care the most about, sports always comes back as a top 3 interest, right? So we wanted to put some special level of focus on on sports and the sports vertical. Now we have with some upcoming announcements next month, we'll have 16 members, official members of our XR Sports Alliance. So looking forward to working with you and all the other members to push the edge of innovation on immersive in sports. But again, we kind of come at it from every single quadrant of device, whether it's fully immersive MR, VR, fully immersive all-in-one AR, or even tethered AR to a puck or a phone, smart glasses, with display, and then even, smart glasses like the Meta Ray-Bans without display and just audio. But we think there's going to be a layer of AI powered engine behind all of these devices going forward. So we're looking at how we run as much of that AI on device as we can, so that you're not always having to go out to a large language model in the cloud to give a user an experience on device. So when we look at how this sort of intersects with sports, we look at it, what's happening in the home, maybe with pairing these types of devices with traditional broadcast that's coming through a screen in the home. We look at it and how you do, add shoulder content around. You may mention some of the things you're doing around tabletop experiences. Yeah. We also want to look at things like, hey, what does fully immersive integrated sports betting look like in these types of devices, or fantasy sports team management in these types of devices, since those are obviously increasing trends. So as a technology enabler, we really are a few layers removed from where you guys are, which is, you're touching fans directly. Our job is to make sure that we're listening to leagues and teams, and the folks on the front lines delivering experiences, so that we're enabling the core technologies as best we can to help you service your customers. So having that feedback loop, for example, through something like the Sports Alliance is super important for us as an enabler, so that we can get those raw inputs and turn that into roadmap outputs for our customers. So
yeah, it's been incredible to be involved with the disparate group of people that make up the XR Sports Alliance. I mean, the ideas that are already flowing only a few months into our involvement is incredible. And I think in the near future, we should hopefully be able to start testing some of the possibilities for all sorts of experiential and really interesting innovations around the XR space that I can't wait to be able to bring to our consumers. So to be involved with this bunch of really innovative, forward-thinking, and also, people who are working together to find solutions in what is often quite an elbows out world, has been really interesting.
Yeah, and that's the hope. I mean, we knew it wasn't going to be easy, but the fact that we're not really, commercializing anything through the Alliance, we're really just a group of collaborative companies who really just want to push the boundaries and learn and share those learnings. So to know that we can experiment with things that may or may not actually end up in your, or official, production or commercial pipeline, but, you want to test something crazy and see how it looks. Something that you never would think to budget for or test with your content, because it's either too far out there or on the fringe, but you think there's a kernel of something there, but it's just too far down in your roadmap. This is why we started the Alliance, is we really want to push the boundaries of what we think could be interesting, and then flip around those learnings, and so that everyone can benefit from them. So
yeah, it's exciting. It's very exciting.
So last question for me, I guess, is have they let you, drive one of the boats yet?
No, sadly not. I haven't driven one of the boats yet. I would absolutely love to. We did something extraordinary last year in Como, which is Rafa Nadal and Will Smith were on site as owners of teams. And we had them race against one another, having had no experience driving the boats before. And this happened just before their teams were about to drive those same boats in a race together. So there were some nervous figures behind the scenes as these two really quite competitive guys, right? Rafa Nadal being possibly slightly more competitive even than Will Smith, took their boats out. But I honestly, it was an absolutely joyful experience to see those two guys, one slightly out of their comfort zones, and then two absolutely loving the experience. So people who haven't been trained have driven the boats. Not me yet, sadly. I'm not an A-lister.
I bet the insurance reps were a little nervous on that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm not sure we could have gotten insurance.
Well, that's what's great about having a new league is like you guys have a little bit more latitude of freedom of degrees of freedom rather for just like taking risks and doing things that like some of the bigger leagues probably wouldn't attempt to do, right? So
that's absolutely true. And I think when I have the chance to think about what I might do next, or what I was thinking when I took this job on, the opportunity to try things, try quickly, fail, and then try again is a big driver. It's great to be able to do stuff in a slightly lower risk environment than say the Premier League or NFL. We get to try stuff, and our audiences enjoy the fact that we're doing something new. As long as I think you are improving the storytelling, that has to be the basis of everything. Does this actually help the audience at home understand what's happening on the ocean or on the lake better? If the answer is yes, it could, then we give it a go.
It feels like you can make a solid argument for taking a boat out in the interest of improving storytelling. It seems like you need that direct hands-on experience to do your job.
Definitely. I'll send that memo to my boss.
Okay, well, we've touched on a lot of topics here, and I haven't really been keeping track of time, but I know we're up against the hour. I don't know if we want to invite Laurence back in if he's listening to wrap things up.
I mean, listening loud and clear. What a conversation. I mean, an on-site meeting with Rafa and Will Smith and Como, not a bad day out, really. And just to make it clear, you're both A-listers in this session, right? So so don't worry about that. But yeah, great chat. I mean, from data to the water, simulation, immersive spectator experiences, sporting philosophies, and Nintendo, of course. The chat had it all, really. I really liked the exploration towards the end into Ewan's partnership and the XR Sports Alliance as well, how innovation and immersive sports content can be driven further, and touch upon some of the questions you asked, Patrick, right? How do we adjust and scale tech for this inevitability of new consumer methods going forward? Or how can we bring spectators closer to the action? How can we relay, as you said, Laurence, that human feeling or spirit that embodies sports, but virtually? And just to link it back to Nintendo again, I really loved hearing the journey starting in Formula E. I think being a massive Nintendo nerd, this was music to my ears to hear of a power up on the side of the track, but don't worry, not like last episode. I won't attempt any tenuous wordplay to weave the word nerd into Nintendo. You'll have to listen to the last episode to find out what I'm alluding to. But a great discussion. I really liked what you
Laurence,
mentioned.
I thought you were just playing Minecraft while we were talking. I didn't know you were paying attention to that.
That's on the second screen. You can't quite see it, but it's just over there in the corner. But also, you mentioned about AI on a book, using AI, putting sort of a book into AI to produce a podcast. So you can do it with your LinkedIn profile as well. And it's quite a frightening experience. And perhaps, I was listening astutely at the time, perhaps we're all AI generated in the session. We're really pushing the boundaries. But look, before we do wrap things up, we do like to close every episode with a few curveballs. So it's a quick fire round of questions designed to pull you out of your day job for a minute and get your mind racing. And yes, pun intended. So I suppose just to kick off, Laurence, we'll start with yourself. What's one belief or assumption in your industry you think needs to be challenged or perhaps completely scrapped?
Wow, what a question. I think that in the production world in particular, it can take a long time for good production talent to get to the front seat. And I think the capability of young people now who have been producing content from the second they got a mobile phone, which is, sometime between the age of 10 and 14 usually, there are some brilliant young content producers out there, and I think and I should call them creators really, because I think that's what the modern nomenclature is. So there are some brilliant young creators out there who should be getting involved in high level sports productions earlier and in more important positions. So I think that would be the challenge, that you don't necessarily need years of experience on the backbench before you can get to the front of the production.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, what do you think?
I probably have to come at it from the technology enablement space, and Qualcomm, has been basically a big R&D engine for the mobile industry and other industries for the past, 20 since our inception in '85. But I look at sort of kind of our R&D spend, and I think there's maybe a preconception that big investments that don't work out are a failure. Whereas so many times you see that there's just a kernel of an idea that evolves into something else and goes a completely different direction. So it's like the serendipity. You never know where these investments how they're gonna pay off in the long run. So I think R&D is calling things failures that start in one place but don't necessarily come out the other end like you thought is something that we should all challenge, I think.
Yeah, I think you both touched upon it earlier in the discussion as well. There's no such thing as a mistake, really, right? Or at least those failures need to happen, or learning objectives or outcomes in order to help influence what could happen next. And I like how you've described that, how it can go off in a tangent. So talking of going off in a tangent, this is a bit more of a curveball, this question. So if we could plug your brain into a simulator and let you experience an alternate career path, no limits, what would it be?
Wow, who's going to go first, Laurence?
Patrick, do you want to take it away?
Okay. There's so many choices, but for whatever reason, the one that jumps out at me first is, you go back to your childhood dreams, right? And my childhood dream was to always be a professional baseball player. It's something that I was literally like, pray, can please let me be a professional baseball player. So maybe to go back and experience that life through a simulation would be my choice.
I like it. Laurence?
I think very difficult question, because I love my job and I've had extraordinary experiences doing what I do, traveling the world, and watching sport for a living is a dream. But I think I would probably, I think maybe being a travel writer would be something that scratched that itch, but gave me a slightly different pace of life, and allowed me maybe to see some of the places that I've visited but not really experienced in a different way.
I like it. I think, given how the conversation go, maybe mine would be a professional podcast host.
Congratulations! You're living.
Thank you so much. It's great. Thank you. We spoke a lot about different trends, how you can anticipate new discoveries, particularly sort of in how consumers can consume tech. Which emerging trend do you think most people are underestimating right now? Laurence, what do you think?
I have to say AR, don't I?
Yeah,
I think
I
I have to say AR is under. I was thinking as we were preparing for this, I was thinking what are the immediate AR applications that we are maybe only months away from, and walking down the street and navigating seems to be like the obvious one. I think we're as soon as I have a pair of Patrick's AR glasses, my phone will never be out of my pocket again. So I think, AR is the thing. And, whether that be sitting watching a football match and getting a data overlay of the stats from each of the players that I'm looking at, with some optical tracking built in, so I can see the last run they made or something like that. There's so much cool stuff that's really not far away in the AR world that I think that's the one for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Patrick, what do you think?
Since you said AR, I'll go the other A and go AI. As hyped as AI is, I still think it's underhyped, because I think most people, including myself, don't really understand how disruptive it's really going to be in all of our lives. If you think about it, it's in adolescence right now, right? So if you think about it in
mm.
10, 20, 30 years, it's almost unfathomable to think how different society is going to be because of AI. And the only thing I can compare it to is like industrial revolution and internet and these big wave changes that come. But I think even that probably undersells how disruptive it's going to be, mostly just because um, I think we don't really know what's cooking, right? And how close they are to AGI and things like that. So that would be mine.
Usually.
Yeah.
I mean, with that sort of word disruption in mind, perhaps that is quite apt to describe the industry as a whole. But if you had to explain the core of your work through a single image, meme, GIF, any infographic like that, do you have an idea what it might be, Laurence?
Single image to describe my work. If it was an image of me, it would be someone sitting on the back bench at the broadcast truck with headphones on, and about 50, 60 screens in front of me. That sort of tells us the story of a lot of my work life. I'm trying to think of a good GIF. And all I can think of is Homer Simpson disappearing into a hedge, which is what I felt like when you asked me the question.
Yeah, makes sense. They're a bit grueling. They're a little bit unfair. It started off quite nicely, and then we're talking about simulators, and well, maybe after the conversation, I'll stick some descriptions through AI and we'll share them on some socials. Patrick, what do you think?
I don't know about GIF, but if I could just pick one image, it would just be a question mark. I mean, I work at a company where there's literally thousands of absolutely brilliant people working on the future, and I'm a BD person without a technical degree. So I say question mark because every single meeting I'm in, if I don't ask a bunch of questions, I just fall so far behind understanding the technology. So I feel like I'm always just clawing and scraping to keep an understanding and my head above water on where we're going from an innovation standpoint. So it's both exhausting and fascinating because I love learning, but I have to make sure to actively learn every day. Otherwise, I'm in big trouble here with all these smart people.
For sure, and that's the thing, right? You'd rather that than it be boring, right? Always asking questions, being inquisitive, and learning from other people. You don't always have to be the smartest person in the room. And perhaps a bit more serious question. We can all breathe a little bit, myself included. But Laurence, what's something about the E1 series that people outside your world perhaps might not get, but really should?
So I think that because of the level of the celebrity team owners involved, people might miss the fact that there's a really interesting, exciting sport there as well. When we set it up, the first race, there were a few things we didn't know. We didn't know how engaged the team owners were going to be. We didn't know how interesting the sporting spectacle was being. We didn't know how good a bunch of characters we would have as our cast, as the pilots and the boats. And it turned out that all three of those were big ticks. But the one I think that could easily get lost is that the sport's really fun. So I'd encourage anyone who can to watch it and see what these incredible flying boats can do.
Amazing. I, for one, will be checking it out very, very soon. Well, look, of course, you should know the drill by now, but Laurence, it's going to be your turn to pass on the baton. So Patrick's going to be back as a guest in an upcoming episode, but what question would you like to throw forward for his next interviewer to ask?
Yeah, I think I'll let Laurence sort of precisely word it, but the concept for the question is basically 10 years from now, how will people be consuming content like E1 content or any sports content?
Well,
Great question.
Very good question. Well, plenty of homework to be done then. Look, that's a wrap on this episode of Playback Pioneers. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure having you both on, Laurence and Patrick. It's really been really interesting. And look, we'll see you all next time as the conversation keeps moving forward.